What if I opened every segment with a scream? Like that's it. That's the intro. Hey everyone, welcome to a new segment on this channel called CJM's Mangaverse with yours truly, Rocky. I'll be talking about all things related to manga, manhwa, and even light novels. Yes, I understand like those other two sounded similar, but I think you guys for the most part should know that it's the Chinese and Korean renditions. I'll also be talking about the authors, the illustrators, news, maybe some historical bits and whatnots, and hopefully you guys will get a kick out of this. I'm thinking some of the guys on occasion on different episodes might come and keep me company, and we'll shoot the breeze a little bit about that. So if you're tuned in, great, awesome, thank you so much. If no one's listening, Casper, you're my best friend. I may have just gave my age away. Anyways, comments, recommendations, suggestions, whatever are always greatly appreciated. Just remember, be nice. Also, before I crack open this episode, I am going to lay out a disclaimer, and it is going to be an ongoing disclaimer, and I will try not to be annoying about it. So here's the disclaimer, okay? I cannot pronounce things for crap. Period. I also cannot English sometimes. Period. And it's never just a period. Point is, I'm going to butcher words. I do my best to try to figure out how to properly pronounce things beforehand, but there's a good chance I'm going to ruin the pronunciation. So please do not come at me. I don't have time for it. So bear with me, be patient, blase, blase, you know how it goes. All right, let's begin. I'm such a dork. I swear I'm sober, I promise. Okay, so wanting to basically just talk about manga's influence. Where did it start? How did this just like randomly develop, right? No, it did not randomly develop. It started in the Heian period in Japan, where a huge cultural explosion and artistic expression took place around this period, because a lot of the artistic expressions and stuff like that were Chinese influenced, and this was around the time where Japanese started doing their own thing. You know, they started doing their own painting techniques and their own themes, and the themes that they were covering were, you know, Japanese history, Japanese literary stories, and folklore and characters and landscapes and literally everything Japanese focused, whereas before it was not. And this artistic expression, one particular one was called Yamato-e paintings. And these paintings were originally done on screens and sliding doors. And they depicted, like I said before, Japanese landscapes and people, events, and things like that. The thing is, these paintings were only owned by the nobles of the time. So it was, you know, the regulars were not able to access these things, right? And eventually, though, the paintings, they started to circulate in the form of, I apologize, imaki, which were illustrated narrative hand scrolls, which made everything much more portable, and they can, you know, take it with them everywhere. A lot of times, you know, the screens, you can't take the buildings with you, right? So here's the thing. Around the year 1000, a noble woman in the Heian court named Murasaki Shikibu wrote the famous novel, The Tale of Genshi. And some even say that this may be the very first novel that was ever written, period. So, and of course, it wasn't the only narrative. There were other narratives that were displayed in Yamato-e paintings, but they started taking bits and pieces of these narratives and translating them to the amakis. And so you had these beautiful transportable painting scrolls depicting the stories that were told, right? So now you fast forward to the Edo period, where social structural changes are taking place, and the Yamato-e painting techniques and the subject matters start evolving. And so by that period, it went from basically nobility to a growing merchant upper class. And they started to tweak the Yamato East styles and whatnot, and it started to transform into a totally different technique and different themes. The technique was called ukiyo-e, which is the woodblock printing technique, and it was like a four-man crew at the time to be able to make these woodblock prints. And the themes at the time, because of the merchant class, were more focused not just on like landscapes and historical periods and events and so forth. It extended to focusing more on everyday life and nature, but also popular sumo wrestlers, kabuki actors, um, geishas, and landscapes, like I said earlier, but even erotica, right? So during the late 18th century, the term manga was coined in connection with the works of Santo Kyoden's illustrated work titled Shiji no Yukikai. Again, I apologize. 16 years later, Katsushika Hokusai took ukiyo to another level through his famous series of prints called Hokusai's Manga in 1814. So it was so popular that 15 volumes of his sketches were created. And throughout his life, side note, he managed to create over 30,000 pieces. And it covered an array of themes and topics, including deities, dragons, ghosts, natures, fantasy creatures, all those awesome stuff. So fast forward to the 20th century, and we come across the artist that would be named both the father of manga and the father of anime. And it was Tekutsa Osamu. He's particularly famous for the manga series called Mighty Atom, but known to everybody else as Astro Boy. And Astro Boy ended up having its own anime, which came out in 1963, and then later that year had an English adaptation that was also released and came to the United States. So let's fast forward again. We're time traveling today. Today, we look at manga, we look at anime. You know, we see that a lot of the themes are reoccurrent, right? It's just themes about life, themes, comical stuff, fantasy stuff, paranormal, supernatural stuff. Not much has changed except style, technique, storytelling. So many things evolve in artistic expression. That goes for anything, not just writing, but even as a musician or an author or someone who does arts and crafts, right? But we're talking about manga here, right? So, one thing that has to be said before I delve into a different subject is, being a mangaka is not easy. It kind of seems like common sense, right? But if you really think about it, being a mangaka entails a lot. Like it's more than just I am going to write this bomb story and then I'm going to draw some pictures to go with it, or I'll get someone else to draw pictures to go with it. There are a lot of techniques and skills involved in this kind of storytelling. And it's no shocker that a lot of mangakas are also artists because creating mangas is more involved more than just text and pictures. It goes down the details like the way panels are set up, line work, lettering, etc., which determines how you want to visually get your message across, even without words. Like the first thing that pops in my head is like, for example, One Piece, right? There's times where you don't even see the people, but you can tell by the lettering style that's used that there are two people talking and one is the aggressor. You know what I mean? So artists, filmmakers, writers, they all have to learn very similar techniques and hone multiple skills to be able to arrest and keep their audience's attention. And that reminds me, I want to talk about this manga I'm currently reading that's still ongoing. It's called My Happy Marriage. It is a shoujo romance fantasy written by Akomi Agito. And it takes place in the Meiji period. And it follows the life of Mio Saimori, which is very Cinderella esque in nature. And basically, Mio is a child from an arranged marriage where both her families come from gifted psychics. And the hope was basically to give birth to a special child possessing specifically a gift called spirit sight. Now, of course, dad was not really in love with Mio's mother, and he was still forced to marry her. There was a lot of animosity in that, and really the only people that Mio had was her mom, and then her mom passed away. So, of course, the dad was free to marry his real true love, and unfortunately for Mio, this means hell on earth because she ended up being the object of her stepmother's animosity and hate. And of course, Mio's dad did nothing. He was very passive and he didn't even defend her. So, around the time that Kaya's 3 and Mio's around 10, Mio ends up basically becoming the house slave. Not even the house servant, but the house slave. And somewhat emotional support, but they were helpless to help her. So she really still, in a sense, didn't have anybody. Um, but eventually, at 19, Mio became of age to be married off. And so, of course, her family decides that they want to marry her off to a man named Kyoka Kodo. I know I'm killing and I apologize. He was a gifted commander from a rich and prestigious family who happened to be a military man, and he was in charge of a special force of also gifted soldiers. But the thing is that he had a horrible reputation for being a sort of emotionless dictator, especially with his previous fiancées. And he had been engaged like I think it was like 3 times, and they all end up running for their lives. So of course, her family would send her away to this guy, because God forbid that they would wish any happiness for her. So even though Mio was aware, of the rumors, she really didn't have a choice because her family didn't want her back. And if he rejected her, she would literally have nowhere to go. So the initial meeting with the fiance proved to be uncomfortable and a bit harsh, to say the least. And really what it is that he's sizing her up. So in the few days that she's been there, um, she catches the attention of the elderly servant named Yuri, and she had been around forever and even saw Kyoka grow up. And Kyoka, after a couple interactions with her, also noticed quite a few things because obviously he's a very intelligent man. And he said something is not right because she was super subservient and would barely give eye contact and always apologizing. And honestly, it also didn't help because both parties noticed that she, supposedly having come from a noble family, was dressed pretty poorly. So he knew after a couple interactions something's wrong. And he also knew she's different. So much so that he decided we need to investigate. So he ends up doing an investigation and he finds out that the Saimori family is not who they portray themselves to be. So on the flip side, Mia also finds out that her fiance is also not what was portrayed to be, that the rumors were just that, rumors. Not that he wasn't or doesn't have the capability of being stern, because he's a military man, that almost comes without saying, right? But because his fiancées previously were just gold diggers. Even though he comes from a rich, prestigious family, he was a man of character and he wasn't having it. And a lot of them just went home crying because he had no intentions in catering to their spoil lifestyle. Fast forward a little bit, and we see that Mio is starting to demonstrate PTSD symptoms. And she's having nightmares every single night. And it catches the attention of Kyoka. And every night, he's with her. Like, they don't sleep together, but he will come into her room and he will soothe her, and without really waking her up, just kind of bringing her out of it. She is not cognizant of his presence. She does not know just yet that this is what he's doing for her. Eventually she finds out, but and of course, she ends up feeling guilty because he's losing sleep and then he has to go to work and blah blah blah. But it just goes to show how this relationship is developing, and that Mio might finally see the happiness that she did not have and that she deserves. So around this time, This is when the crap starts hitting the fan, and this is where the exciting stuff starts kicking in. And this is also where I'm not going to divulge too much, right? She ends up being the object of a supernatural attack, so much so that he gives her like a protective talisman kind of thing, so whenever she goes out in public it can keep her safe. But then you have a kidnapping that takes place, power struggle between her and her sister, and then his unit ends up being activated because there's some unusual supernatural happenings and reports that are coming in. And of course there's other things happening, but I just wanted to name a few. So um, even though like the topics of abuse, trauma, brokenness, and the hope that Mio will finally get some justice and vindication after everything that she has gone through can make this manga really emotionally charged. In my opinion, it's a really good read, and I can't wait for the other volumes to come out. They did this year around April or something like that. They announced that there will be an anime adaptation coming out. The release date hasn't been 100% confirmed from the last time I checked. There is a trailer out. I'll leave that in the description box. It's very brief because obviously it's still in production. But they are going to release a live action film on March 17th of next year. So hopefully it'll be really, really good. I'm just going to wrap up this episode. Next one will come out after New Year's. But whatever you guys do, please, please, please have a happy and safe holiday and a happy new year. Bye.